Hey, this song by ELVIS. What direction is this? I'm just cooking right now, but I turned off my propane. My boy, he had a girl, Elvis. I wonder if the person that wrote it understood this would be promoting more of Elvis's tendency to have sad or depressing thoughts, and nobody around him wanted to trigger him or deal with this trigger. It's easier to medicate and just laugh and eat and play music, but not do a lot of the personal development work. Like I said before, it is a sad song. You can tell it's not a planned family. And it's cruel to kids to have adult children have kids, right? That haven't undergone their maturation process or have the skill sets to raise children. I think we're pretty low on the list of species who can raise their own offspring as well, with the right skill sets for the modernity that they'll live in. I mean, some of the other species have had to add the modernity of avoiding ever-expanding cities and people primate ever-violent behaviors. An inability to make friends with other species is something we suffer from. And if you think your dogs or your cats, I can spend time with you and show you maybe it's more that you're domesticating them a particular way to be there for you because you're afraid to be with your own thoughts and feelings. So, but anyways, coming back to the human condition with this one is, a lot of jobs that I've observed or heard about or been part of that deal with vulnerable sectors that have suffered trauma is I think the main strategy they're using to cure trauma is to avoid triggers instead of knowing how to deal with them. Now, when I worked as a life skills coach, during my training, it was very important we deal with our triggers so that if they ever came up, our own triggers or that of others, we'd know how to deal with them and role model that. And, with kind of minimal counseling training in that course, but I did do counseling training myself. So that's why, if somebody asked me, can you be a couple counselor for free, Martin, a volunteer couples counselor, I would. An agreement I'd have to make with a couple at the beginning is if you both agree to have me start with you, is you should both agree that to fire me it has to be a mutual decision. Because if it is, then I know they're not ready. And also, if I screw up, it would be both would be agreeing, right? It wouldn't be like one person, this is too much, or Martin's taking your side, and it wouldn't be sides. They'd be just like pointing out maybe some of the work to do, and some of the two in the couple would find it more overwhelming, this work that needs to be done, especially if they have kids already or want to have more. You could tell they would still want to continue these unplanned and immature families that keep getting worse every generation. But anyways, I would offer that service if anybody wanted, but less and less people want to take advantage of it. But more and more interactions I have with people is they talk about themselves, and it's like, okay, well, that's nice, but it's kind of a change of conversation, and it's like no reflecting what I just said about my experience is so that, an inability to reference the outside world. This is very common in couples or between parents and children, so it's pretty sad. But the pattern I was talking about in dealing with trauma, it seems our failed species' main strategy is avoid triggers. When a life skills coach learns to work through these triggers, bonus if they have, mental health training and counseling training, and you can't not work through them. And life skills coaches might have triggers, but they'll role model how to work through it with these life skills and all the other skills they might bring in. And but people don't want to do that work anymore. So it's really weird that you wonder why life skills has been more and more misdefined and misrepresented, and a lot of it is not doing the work. So not understanding what life skills are, as much as I'll say, for example, New Start model, Saskatchewan New Start model, and people don't look it up, and they still think it's about, coloring things with people or reading from an AA book or whatever. That's not life skills, it's very, very different life skills. And you don't need You don't need a high school diploma. You just pretty much need to mostly communicate in the same language, mostly, as the person giving the course. So, it's pretty sad you don't get to the point to demonstrate that's what it is when people don't participate. And that includes people that are getting paid to work with this sector. They don't want to participate in a life skills training, so they can role model it. They can know how to deal with triggers by starting with their own. So yeah, we're pretty much doomed as a species with just that, as I've mentioned before. But if you look in the news of how many people are fighting for their right to decide to have an abortion, instead of talking about why is it so hard to understand the concept of contraception and family planning and Planned Parenthood, and preparing for it with organizations that kind of assess, for these parenting skills beforehand. And why is the fight when it's too little too late, when the harm's been done, the after the fact, instead of talking about preparing couples for parenthood, but also talking about contraception, how cheap it is and free it is, and how that's what, it's not illegal contraception, but people are going to fight for not how to use or the availability, or say, sorry, I didn't use contraception properly, and that's why, or I don't know how to interact with the opposite sex. I always end up pregnant because I can't say no or something, whatever it might be, that leads to a lot of these unplanned pregnancies and the right for abortion. It really shows the immaturity. The conversations, the fight for freedom, is the freedom to become more and more devolved and redneck, and take care of things after the fact. So again, I see the species I share DNA with as extremely juvenile, immature, and developmentally disabled. So every time, somebody says, oh, they're pregnant, oh man, I don't think I've ever met anybody in the last 10 years that I could be happy to have heard somebody's pregnant.